Welcome to the fourth week of this year's In Times Like These recap. Now let's get into this. Starting with Max Russo, who was approached by Yulissa Torres at school, discussing the fact that she and her mother Isabel will move into the Russo estate. He states how she might not want people to know that since it seems like the whole world hates him because of the social media hate page Kiev Berg made about them, but they don't know that Kiev is behind it. Yulissa assures Max that the whole world doesn't hate him, stating how he has family and other students who don't believe Yvette. She goes on to encourage him to ignore what the internet is saying about him. Max begins to wonder if Vanessa is joining in on the online hate. Yulissa assures Max that Vanessa isn't like that, trying to encourage him that Vanessa will figure out the truth. After she says that, a photo goes around of the both of them, warning Yulissa to stay away from Max. Isabel Torres arrives at the estate, welcomed by her ex, Isidore Russo. She tells Isidora how they need to set some ground rules and doesn't really have much desire to interact with him while she and Yulissa stay. Isidore states how they'll keep running into each other. Since the estate is huge, Isabel feels like it's possible for them to keep their distance. Before she heads to her room, Isidore asks Isabel what she plans to do if Devante gets away with what he did to Elvira. Isabel tells Isidore how she's hoping that Elvira gets justice. That way Yulissa can go back to Theodosius' palace like she hopes to, and Devante can pass it on to her and Nichelle. He begins to ask if she has any idea on who would run the hotel. Isabel begins to ask Isidore why he's so concerned. Not wanting to explain that he and his son Alan plan to take over Theodosius' palace, the answer that Isidore gives is that since she won't be staying at the estate forever, he's just concerned about what she'll do next. Isabel tells Isidore to let her worry about that and to grant her wishes. Then she walks off. Afterward, Isidore is met by Jeremiah Dorval. Heidi Russo is in her office, surprised to see Clarice entering. She asks her mother-in-law if she came in to scold her for the divorce. Clarice denies how that's not what she came in to do, telling her daughter-in-law how she shouldn't give up on her marriage just because Gianni is. She goes on about how she's certain that Gianni wants to pursue Quinlan when he still loves Heidi, certain that Heidi still loves Gianni too. Even if Clarice is right, Heidi feels like there's no way that Gianni will see past her hurt. Clarice encourages Heidi to fight, telling her daughter-in-law how Quinlan isn't fit to wear her shoes. Harley Drake is met outside of her room in Theodosius' palace by a drunk Ben Russo, confronting her about the fact that she's defending Devante Torres, but that it doesn't make sense as to why she would, since she longs to have a close relationship with her son Alan. He begins to wonder if Devante has something over her head or over Alan's head. After Harley is adamant that Devante doesn't, Ben begins to remember that Alan was attacked recently and all of a sudden she became Devante's lawyer, questioning if Devante was behind his cousin's attack. Harley pleads with Ben to leave it alone. Ben rushes off, then Harley follows. Once Ben reaches up to Devante, Ben punches him, knocking him to the ground. Devante Torres gets back up, asking Harley what she told Ben. She's adamant that she only told Ben nothing, telling Devante about Ben's claims. As for Ben, he's certain that he's not making crazy claims, telling Devante how he won't allow him to intimidate his way out of prison. When Ben charges at Devante once again, Devante's son Pacho stops him. Pacho suggests that Ben leaves, but Ben refuses to leave, knowing that Devante is a threat to his entire family. Devante threatens to have security called to throw Ben out, telling him that he'll also be pressing charges. Before Ben gets arrested, he tells Devante how he only wants to get rid of him because he sees him as a threat. Eventually, Ben is handcuffed and thrown out of the hotel as he calls Devante a coward. Vanessa Dorval checks up on her best friend Yulissa after the photo of her and Max was spread all over the internet. Yulissa expresses how Vanessa should be concerned about Max, pointing out how she was right about Max being cyberbullied, adding the fact that someone is taking photos of them without their knowledge. Vanessa begins to admit that it's getting a bit excessive. As for Yulissa, she feels like it's more than a bit excessive, stating how the new social media page against Max is filled with hateful comments. Even though Vanessa understands that two wrongs don't make a right, she feels like it doesn't erase the fact that Max forced himself on Yvette, allegedly. Yulissa begins to explain to Vanessa how Max feels like she hates him because of Yvette's accusations. Vanessa admits that she hates what Max has done, stating how she would like for him to turn his life around. Yulissa expresses that she would like Max to give his life to Christ as well, but states that she'd also like to see that he doesn't get tormented while his freedom is already at stake. Yvette Mitchell and Zeke Franklin come out of the school basement after doing the nasty, since Zeke is pretty much using Yvette for pleasure, since hooking up with Yvette is what made his relationship with Nichelle end in the first place. JJ Dorval notices this, but when he confronts Yvette, she states how it's nothing. He proceeds to ask Yvette if she can get people to stop hating on Max on the internet for Yulissa's sake. Yvette questions if JJ cares about Yulissa more than her, since Yulissa just converted to Christianity. Before JJ has a chance to reply, Keeve approaches them, talking about the viral photo that he created. Yvette walks off, then JJ scolds Keeve for being insensitive. After Jeremiah tells Essidor about the threatening letter, Essidor is adamant that he had nothing to do with it. Jeremiah reminds Essidor how he tried to run him out of town before and doesn't feel like Essidor was happy that he failed to do so. Annoyed, Essidor tells Jeremiah how he has more important things to worry about than to cause problems for him. Jeremiah receives a threatening text, believing that Essidor had nothing to do with it, then walks off, texting the anonymous individual, threatening to call the police. But the individual threatens Jeremiah and his family. Heidi arrives at the police station to bail Ben out, asking her son if he'll finally stop abusing the alcohol. Ben tells his mother to leave it alone, but she tells him how she won't leave it alone and see him self-destruct, asking him what would possess him to attack Devante. Instead of telling his mother about his suspicions, Ben expresses his disdain of Harley defending the man who took Elvira's life. Heidi tells her son to get a hold of his emotions, but can't do that while he's on the bottle, especially when she's already worried about Max's case against Yvette, expressing how he knows that she's right. Ben asks his mother why she left out the part that she and Gianni are divorcing. Heidi explains to her son that Clarice spoke to her, understanding that she's responsible for the current state of her marriage but won't give up on it. This causes Ben to ask if Heidi will refuse to sign the divorce papers. Pacho asks his father Devante if he's okay. Devante tells his son that he'll live, thanking him for standing up for him against Ben. Suddenly, Nichelle shows up, asking her father what happened. When Pacho tries to tell Nichelle that it doesn't matter, Devante informs his daughter of the altercation, assuring her that he'll be okay. When Devante goes on to state how he'll be pressing charges, Pacho expresses how he doesn't think that's necessary. Nichelle wonders if her older brother wants the person who attacked their father to get away with what they did. The response that Pacho gives Nichelle is that he only wants to move past it. Devante isn't willing to move past it at all, especially since Ben is the reason why he's facing charges for Elvira's passing. Pacho reminds Devante that Ben is the son of the district attorney, stating that Ben might not face legal consequences. Once Devante states that he'll make sure Ben faces consequences, Pacho wonders what his father means by that. All Devante replies with is that karma will get Ben. At Russo Jewelers, Alan is in his father's office as Alan expresses to Essidor how concerned he is about Isabel and Yulissa moving into the family estate while they're trying to obtain Theodosius' palace. As for Alan, he feels like that's the exact opposite of what Essidor wants, wondering if his feelings will get in the way of going after Theodosius' palace like they agreed. Essidor tells his son how he never allowed his feelings to mix with business. Alan wonders whether Essidor would care what Isabel would feel when they acquire Theodosius' palace. Essidor tells his son to let him worry about that. Even though Alan wants to trust his father, He tells him how he can't risk failing their task, mentioning that it's much more than a business acquisition, but it's to ensure that Elvira gets justice. Isidore understands what's at stake, telling his son that there's no reason for him to worry. Alan tells his father that he'll trust him not to let his feelings about Isabel get in the way of taking over Theodosius's palace. At the Dorval estate, Jeremiah informs his wife Shelley that he confronted Isidore. Shelley expresses her dislike of what he did. Jeremiah understands his wife's frustration, telling her that he needed to find out if the Russos were behind the letter. Finding out that they weren't, informing her of the text message he received. This is when Shelley asks her husband if he'll agree to go to the police. Jeremiah states how he doesn't feel like there's enough to go to the police with, but Shelley disagrees, stating that this person is going after their family. In Jeremiah's viewpoint, whoever is sending messages is all talk, but Shelley isn't willing to take the risk. Jeremiah responds by saying that whoever is making these threats will be the one taking the risk if they come after them. He goes on to say how their family is facing peace right now and doesn't want their children, especially JJ, to worry about something that might not be worth anything worrying about. Shelley wonders what they'll do about the harassment. The answer that Jeremiah gives is to ignore the person who's sending the text and work hard not to react to them. What the two of them don't know is that JJ heard the entire thing. When Heidi meets with Gianni at the Russo estate, she tells her husband that she didn't come to speak about Ben and Max, but to tell him that she won't be signing the divorce papers. Gianni tells his wife that she has no other choice. Heidi tells her husband how wrong he is, expressing how she's done a lot of thinking and states how she doesn't want a divorce. Scoffing, Gianni states how he wants one and doesn't want to stay married to her so that she can keep his family's benefits. Heidi tells Gianni how it's more than just keeping his family's benefits, but states how she's still in love with him. Gianni doesn't believe it, telling her that he's no longer in love with her, which she doesn't believe. She goes on to tell him how she can't imagine a life without him. Gianni tells Heidi that she doesn't have to imagine since they're connected through their sons for life. He adds how she doesn't just get to come running back to him when she gets tired of Finnegan. Once again, Heidi reminds her husband that her affair with Finnegan was a mistake and that she was living a fantasy, just like he's trying to live a fantasy with Quinlan. Gianni claims that what he has with Quinlan is real. When Heidi asks why Quinlan hasn't agreed to become official with him, he tells Heidi how sad she is and that she needs to leave. Before she heads off, Heidi tells her husband how she will be back at the estate and that she will be his wife until the day he dies. When JJ and Vanessa come back home from school, she points out how she's noticed how JJ is in such a bad mood, questioning if he's still taking his medication. Annoyed, JJ tells his sister that he is still taking his medication. This causes Vanessa to ask her younger brother what's wrong. He tells his sister how their parents are hiding something from them. When Vanessa asks what it is, JJ expresses how he doesn't know for sure, but overheard their parents state that they've been getting threats from someone and doesn't want them to know. As for Vanessa, she feels like their parents just don't want them to worry, but JJ feels like their parents would have let them in if he wasn't schizophrenic. She expresses how she doesn't believe that at all, but JJ reminds Vanessa that he heard a good portion of it. Hearing their father state how JJ is getting the hang of the disease, fearing that he'll go insane again, feeling like their parents can't trust him enough to handle the bad news. Vanessa suggests that JJ tells his parents about it, but he refuses, feeling like they'll just hover over him. Even though Vanessa tries to assure her younger brother how that isn't true, JJ feels like it is because of what their parents are doing at the moment. Vanessa begins to ask JJ what he plans to do about it. JJ tells his sister that he'll prove to their parents that he won't go crazy with what he already knows. Max walks into Ben's condo, finding him drinking, asking his older brother if he's learned nothing after getting arrested. Ben states how he only learned that he should have pushed Pacho out of the way so that he can go after Devante. Angered, Max asks his older brother if he plans to face a judge like that, and saying those words, wondering if he cares that Devante is pressing charges against him. Ben states that he doesn't, certain that he'll get off for being Heidi's son. This proceeds to anger Max even more, stating how he wishes that he had Ben's confidence when it came to Yvette's accusations against him. Ben begins to apologize, asking Max how he's holding up. Max tells Ben how he's not making it easier with his reckless behavior, even though Ben reminds Max that it's not his responsibility to worry about him. Max states how difficult that would be since that means he would have to stop caring about him. Ben tells his brother how neither of them are going to prison. Max states how he's not too sure about that, then states how he's starting to not care. Worried, Ben wonders if Max is saying that because of the drinking. The response that Max gives is that he just wants everything to be over. Ben tells his brother to hang in there and fight for his freedom. Max replies by telling Ben that he should just tell himself that and fight for his own life, walking off. At the Global News Press studio, Adaku introduces Quinlan to Devante, but of course there's no need for introduction because Zeke dated Nichelle. But we all know how that ended up. Adaku leaves, telling Quinlan to behave herself. Then Quinlan asks Devante how long he's known Adaku for. The answer that he gives is that he hasn't known Adaku for long, but wanted to get in touch with her to share his side of the story. But he also tells the reporter how it doesn't seem like she's too happy to be speaking with him, wondering if she thinks that he took Elvira's life. Quinlan, assuring Devante that she has no issue with him personally due to Zeke, explains to Devante that it doesn't matter what she thinks, and that it's up to the American people to decide for themselves whether he's guilty or not. She also reminds Devante that she'll be interviewing him about a serious crime which he's been charged with, adding how it's a crime which destroyed an entire family and left a 5-year-old boy traumatized. Since she did a documentary on Elvira, Devante states how he understands why she would feel such a close connection to the Russos, trying to make it seem like he's not the reason for their pain. Quinlan states how they'll have to wait for a jury to decide that. Then they get ready to begin the interview. Can't get enough of the crazy world of In Times Like These? Then treat yourself to a binge watch of In Times Like These. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You're not ready for what's to come, but tune in anyways.